Greetings, Earthlings! Welcome back to 7th Street.
You're doomed. You're all doomed.
Now, as some of you may or may not know, a big-budget fan film of Friday the 13th that I was featured in was recently released online for free. Friday the 13th Vengeance. You can actually go and watch this film right now. But anyway, enough of plugging my own acting career. I figured that since a Friday the 13th fan film was just released, I figured I should do a video on the Friday the 13th series. So, without further ado, here it is. My list of Friday the 13th films from worst to best. Before we begin this list, I do want to give a trigger warning like I always do. This is my list. These are my favorite films. These are the ones that I think are the worst. This is just my opinion. I'm in no way an expert, and clearly I have shitty taste in cinema. So this should be taken as such. It's just an opinion. I realize that probably 80% of the people that watch this video will just think that I'm a complete dumbass and will never watch another video of mine. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into this list. I also wanted to mention that I will not be including the 2009 Friday the 13th remake, seeing as that I've only seen it once and I didn't really like it, and I don't really consider it official canon. That being said, I will be including Freddy vs. Jason because I've seen it multiple times, and I do consider it official canon. I do consider it a part of the series, whereas the 2009 remake is a remake. It's a retelling. I know that that's like sort of debatable, but just for the sake of this list, I decided to leave the 2009 Friday the 13th remake off of this list.
I don't think he's out there.
Why don't you just stick your head out and have a peek?
Jason Goes to Hell.
This should come as no surprise to anyone. This movie is just a complete stinker, and I don't know if there's very many people out there who will debate that. It's oddly a movie that I want to like. Every time I watch Jason Goes to Hell, I want to like it, just because it's doing something very different. And I'm a contrarian. I really like when things are different, and I can say, ooh, actually, that's a classic. But in the case of Jason Goes to Hell, it's just not the case. And even as a kid, like the first time seeing this movie, and the military shows up and starts shooting him with as soon as the military shows up and starts shooting Jason with machine guns and lobbing grenades at him, as like an 8-year-old, I knew that this was just bullshit. You know, that's just not supposed to happen in the Friday the 13th universe, you know? You're not supposed to have the military come in. It's just unfair. It just doesn't fit. Right from the beginning of the movie, it's just, the tone is just off. It's not a Friday the 13th film. And just the whole aspect of Jason being killed and not being in his body anymore, but being sort of like a body snatcher and his soul going into people, is just too weird. It just doesn't belong within the Friday the 13th franchise. By the 9th film, the universe is very well established here, and if you're gonna do something drastic, you should probably do something goofy drastic, not terrible drastic. And it's just so bizarre. They just start messing with, like, the continuity of the series and who Jason was. And it's just, it's really weird. You know, the first few films sort of concentrated on Jason maybe as kind of like this ghostly actual person, as a legend. But by this point in the series, he'd just become this, like, godlike figure. He was just unkillable, and it's just so weird how they just did this 180 with the film. And I feel bad for the filmmakers. Listening to the commentary, you can tell that they're really trying to justify the film. And like I said, I really want to like it because it's different. Every time I see it, I think this is the time it's going to click. And it never clicks. It's just bad. The whole soul-stealing aspect is just bad. The character with the cowboy hat who's like hunting Jason is just bad. It's just all around bad. The baby thing is bad. There's one scene in this film that's redeemable, that's worth seeing, and it comes at about the 15-minute mark, and it's when the coroner eats Jason's still beating heart. That's about it. That's all people need to see. The rest of the film is bullshit. It's not a Friday the 13th film. There's barely any Jason Voorhees in it. So yeah, Jason Goes to Hell has to be the worst in the series.
10. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood.
This was another one that I want to like because they're doing something different here. And they're not just following a goofy formula. They're like earnestly trying to revive the series. But there's something about this, like, we're basically going to bring Carrie into the picture and have a Jason Voorhees versus Carrie film that's very serious. It just, for whatever reason for me, really doesn't work. Jason kind of feels a little bit like a subplot at times, and it seems to feel more focused on this psychic girl, and it's just never clicked for me. On the special edition version of the film that I have, some of the behind the scene features show that there was originally a lot more gore, and like the MPAA made them cut a lot of that out, and some of it looks really good. That probably could have helped the film a little bit. I'm still just kind of turned off by the psychic aspect of the film. I don't know why. It just, once again, kind of feels too different, or just doesn't really feel like it fits within the universe of Friday the 13th. You've already got by this point in the franchise, Jason is already kind of like this ghost omnipotent person. So bringing in this like whole other weird supernatural element, just like very different supernatural element, just feels really strange. It's kind of like the Halloween franchise where, Michael Myers starts off normal, and then he kind of becomes a little more omnipotent, ghost-like, and then all of a sudden we've got, like, witches, and he's, like, controlled by some weird pagan ritual? It's just weird. It doesn't really belong. It feels like a weird subgenre being crammed inside of an already established subgenre, and for whatever reason it feels tone-deaf to me. I know that A New Blood has its own fans and following, and that's great. I wish I liked it more than I did, and it's another one that I really feel like I should like more than I do, but it loses me. It's just not one that I really enjoy watching, and that really sums up this franchise. I should have mentioned this earlier. This is really like a nostalgic franchise for me. This was really the first slasher series that I really became interested in. So, like, I don't know, if, like, I really didn't click with it when I was younger, it's just not gonna click for me. And this was one as a kid, just like Jason Goes to Hell, where I was kind of going, what? This doesn't really feel like a Friday the 13th film. So, yeah, New Blood, second worst.
9.
I know, it's a ridiculous film, But, like, sometimes the way I describe it is like, all right, if I was an executive and it was the end of the Friday the 13th franchise, you know, we all knew it was coming, and, like, these different people came in with different scripts, and one person was like, hey, we want to do this one where, like, the military kills Jason, and then he, like, starts soul-stealing and hopping into other people's bodies, and then another person was like, we want to bring Carrie into it and have, like, this Carrie psychic girl, like, fight Jason at Camp Crystal Lake with her mind powers. And then someone was like, let's have Jason go to space in the year 3000 and kill people on a space station. I would have said space every time. I think that, like, I know that those movies always jump the shark. People always say, like, a horror franchise completely jumps the shark when it goes to space. And that's probably true, but I always enjoy those movies. I really enjoy Leprechaun in space. I really like Hellraiser 4. I like the ones that go to space. They don't really bother me. I'm a sci-fi fan, and I think they're fun. And Jason X is at least not trying to be serious. It's super tongue-in-cheek. Like, there's nothing serious about this movie at all. It's, like, pretty enjoyable because it's just being goofy. I remember when this movie came out in the theaters. I remember very vividly seeing the trailer for it with my dad and my cousin Cameron, and my dad rolling his eyes and going, oh my god, they're making another one. And, like, it's just kind of like one of the best ways to end this franchise. Like, I know they made Freddy vs. Jason, but this one really did kind of end, like, the numbered sequels. And, like, Friday the 13th always got a bad rap for doing that, because they made, like, 9 movies in 10 years. Like, every year in the 80s, they made a Friday the 13th film, and there are jokes all the time, like Friday the 13th, Part 14. And it's just a great send-off, I think, for the series to just, like, take it to space and make it super tongue-in-cheek and not serious. And I don't know, there's just something charming about it. Like, they poke fun at the franchise, and the space setting is kind of cool. And it's one of those movies that it's like, even if you haven't seen it, like, you know exactly what happens. You know, they, like, kill him, and somehow Jason's gonna come back as, like, super futuristic robot Jason. Like, you know that shit's gonna happen because it's set on a space station in the year 3000. So there are things about it that I think are fun. And of, like, the ballsy decision Friday the 13th movies, I mean, I guess there are others in the franchise, but of, like, the big ones, or the ones I consider, like, not working particularly well, I think this one works the best, if that makes sense.
8. Sleep or ghost! Freddy vs. Jason. Winner kills all.
This is one that I really didn't want to like when it came out, and I was in 6th grade. But every time I've seen it, I think I like it a little bit more and more. And, around, you know, when I turned, like, 18, 19, and I was out of high school and going to film school and staying up late and drinking and smoking pot with my friends and stuff, this just kind of became one that I, like, kind of dug watching. There's something about it, once again, that's sort of tongue-in-cheek and not uber serious. You know, I think if you're gonna, like, make Jason square off against someone, it does make sense to take another well-established film franchise monster and do it. You know what I mean? Like Toho proved that point, you know? Some of the best Toho science fiction monster films are like, oh, Mothra was successful and Godzilla was successful. Let's make them fight, you know? And, you know, sometimes when it's like you have monsters that just existed within the Godzilla universe, it didn't work as well as when you, like, took in an outside already, like, successful monster. So I guess there's, like, that element to it, too, that's interesting. And, you know, Freddy is interesting in that, like, he just exists, like, within dreams and stuff, and he's kind of like an apparition, but he really only exists like in one area, kind of like Jason, so it doesn't feel, I guess, so weird that they exist within the same universe. Maybe I'm contradicting myself here, but other than that, I mean, you shouldn't be looking for a lot of sense to be made from a movie called Freddy vs. Jason anyway. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about Freddy and Jason fighting, and I think, like, the adventure to get there is pretty cool. I kind of like the concept of, like, Freddy following, like, his rules for his universe. You know, everyone forgot about him, so he doesn't exist anymore if nobody's afraid. So what he does is he visits Jason while Jason's hibernating and convinces Jason to go to Elm Street to make people afraid again so that Freddy can come back. I think that's interesting. And then once Freddy comes back, he's like, okay, Jason can go away, but he's too dumb and lumbering and slow and just keeps killing people. So now Freddy has, like, sort of a good motivation to kill him off. So it sets it up pretty well, and they start kind of as, like, allies and then become enemies, which is also interesting. So there are, like, a lot of cool things going on there. And there are cool deaths in the movie, too, like some cool dream sequences. Yeah, I kind of like the moment where the main character is in, like, the police station, right? And then there's, like, the girl with, like, the missing eyes or whatever. It's been a little while since I've seen it. But, yeah, there's cool things about Freddy vs. Jason. Go fuck yourself. It's better than people give it credit for.
7. Jason will come to you. Friday the 13th, Part 3.
This is one that was super high on my list when I was a little kid, and every time I see it, it just drastically plummets down my list. It's one that just gets worse the older you get and the more you watch it. The 3D gimmicks are just super hokey, and that's usually not something that bothers me, but for whatever reason, it really bothers me in this one. And maybe once again it's me kind of being a contrarian, but I feel like the only reason people really like this one is because it's the first one where Jason has his hockey mask, and it is like a really groundbreaking moment in the series. Which is fine and true, like it is a groundbreaking moment in the series, but it doesn't really make it like a particularly good Friday the 13th film. It is one that just, for me, just kind of blends into other films, and like the stupid jokester stoner character who has the hockey mask is like really obnoxious, and there aren't like to my knowledge there aren't really like any kills in it that I'm like, oh yeah, that kill, you know? Like maybe the spear gun, but once again, I feel like I remember that because it's like a hokey 3D gimmick. Like even in A New Blood, like, you know, there's like the sleeping bag kill, or in Jason X, you know, there's the freezing the person's face and smashing it. Like every other film kind of has like the big money shot scene, and I'm sure Part 3 has that big money shot scene, but for me it like blends. Like I'm gonna see a comment and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that was Part 3. Like there's something about it that really doesn't click for me, which is funny. There's stuff that clicks. I certainly like it better than some of the other, like, obviously some of the obvious shitty movies in the series. This is like where the series on my list starts getting good, and I typically have a more positive reaction to it. But I'm just giving reasons for why it's so low on my list. I just feel like it's a little played out, really overhyped, and you know, I have a version with the 3D glasses, and I watched the 3D version, and after you get over that gimmick and you get really sick of all the 3D gimmicks that are in the film, it really just kind of comes up short. And it's got like that really long-winded, drawn-out opening to it. And I understand that this was like, you know, they did this for like the theater, but we're talking about the 1980s. Like, there was definitely home video at the time. You didn't have to like do the whole like film serial thing. I mean, they did everything but like having someone come on screen and be like, last time, Elliot Ness and his men speed toward Capone's hideout. Like, they do everything except doing that. It's just like this long-winded, drawn-out retelling of, like, the first two films, and it's like, get on with it. Especially if you're binging the series, you might as well skip the first 5 minutes of part 3. So, calm down, guys. I know that people really love part 3 in 3D, but it's just not that good.
6. You may only see it once, but that will be enough. Friday the 13th.
I'm sure that, like, all of the cast and crew from Friday the 13th Vengeance, they're gonna get to this part in the video, and they're gonna come behead me at my fucking house. Like, I'm just saying, like, this is just my opinion, this is just watchability for me. This is, like, I don't claim to be, like, some expert here or anything, although I have a channel reviewing horror movies. And may I say that this is the number 6 spot, so this is technically on, like, the better half here. This is, like the good half, as opposed to the bad half. So, I mean, this is, like, where the films are good. Like, this is a good movie. I'm not saying it's not a good movie, but yes, Friday the 13th Part 1, the first one, is just one that I don't enjoy as clearly as much as everyone else does, you know, and I think a big part of that, once again, is nostalgia. Like, I was born in 1992. Like, the first 9 films in the franchise were already created by the time I was born. So by the time I was like 7 and my older cousin Cameron and I were renting these movies and trying to binge the marathons, like, we already knew who Jason Voorhees was before going back and watching the franchise. And I get it, like I make films, I'm supposed to be a fan of films, and yes, I appreciate the first one. That being said, you know, in regards to the first movie in a slasher franchise, like I try to look at it with a different set of eyes. Like, I try to watch Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, as like a contained film, like trying to pretend I don't know anything about the rest of the franchise. And that film is brilliant. But watching the first Friday the 13th as like a contained film, is like, just kind of feels like a generic slasher, like a lot of the other generic slashers. Like, it's got good effects and everything. It just, you know, it's not like drastically different from something like, you know, like, I'm sorry, but it's not drastically different from something like The Final Terror or Sleepaway Camp. Like, the budget's about the same. It's got better effects, sure, and like maybe a cooler twist, but it's not drastically different from those films from, like, if you try to put blinders on to the rest of the series. And then, like I said, from a nostalgia factor, like, I wasn't really interested in Pamela Voorhees or, you know, the sort of giallo aspect of the first one, like the mystery aspect. Like, I didn't give a shit about that when I was a kid. I just wanted to see Jason Voorhees in his fucking, like, hockey mask, you know? So, I mean, from both angles, it's really hard for me to honestly put the first one, as far as, like, enjoyability, any higher on this list. It's not one that I typically go back and watch a ton. Like the rest of the movies on this list, I go back and I watch all the time. I love rewatching them. They've got a, like, ginormous rewatchability to them. I don't feel like the first Friday the 13th has a ton of rewatchability. That being said, like, it's a great film. It's fantastic. Like, it's got fantastic effects. It's got Kevin Bacon in it. I mean, it's one of the movies that has helped me make my Bacon number 2. I am 2 degrees away from Kevin Bacon because of this movie, because of Friday the 13th. I've got a lot of love for it. And it's a groundbreaking movie that, you know, I know that, like, Halloween and Black Christmas, like, a lot of those films are really responsible for, like, creating the slasher, but, you know, the first Friday the 13th, I think, was, like, really kicked it into high gear and made it, like, this big, marketable subgenre that like everybody jumped on and made like these camp slasher movies. You know, it's like a type of subgenre that I want to do. I want to make a camping slasher movie because of this film. It's super important and super well done, obviously. But just on my list of favorite Friday the 13th films, this is just where it ends up falling for me. I just don't go back to it as much as I go back to some of the other ones.
5.
This is another one that's a huge fan favorite. It's definitely a favorite of mine. As a kid, it was probably quite a bit higher on my list. I really like the tongue-in-cheek aspect to it. I like that it's like not taking itself overly seriously too much. And I fucking love Tom Matthews. I'm a huge Tom Matthews fan. I love him in this movie, and I love him in Return of the Living Dead. I even like him in Alien from LA. I mean, he's a good actor. Every time he shows up on screen, he's like a lot. He's just like a way better actor than he gets credit for. And it's interesting that he sort of just like left the game when he was like at the top like of like the subgenre world. I mean, he's like kind of the top of the horror world in the 80s, I guess. He did like, you know, a bunch of pretty big horror films, and he just like left and started a family, and really like the only thing he's been doing are like Christian films, like made for straight to DVD Christian films. Like he just kind of like got out of it, and it's not, I mean, I'm sure he said, but you know, it's not super clear to me why he did that. He just decided to leave, which is really sad because he's really good as Tommy Jarvis in this movie. He's really like believable, and you know, Jason Lives just has like a lot of like cool money shot, glorious moments to them, especially the beginning. Like the revival of Jason is just great with the metal pole. Like the whole pre-title sequence in this is great. I love the paintball scene. I love the climax of this movie, like on the boat and pouring the fucking gasoline in the water. Like all of that is fantastic. And super well done and well acted. Like this one has like, since it's like the first one in a while in the franchise where it really has that summer camp aspect to it. Like some of the other ones strayed away from that just because I think probably budgetary issues. But this one feels like really vast, and like a lot of money was put into it, and it's got some really cool kills and you know, really, you know, a lot of noteworthy actors to like the franchise are in this one, and it's a fan favorite for a fucking reason. Because it's so good. And like I said, this one appealed a lot more to the kid in me than like the adult. It's probably gone down on my list just as I get older. I don't really know why. I don't really know why it has. It, you know, it probably should be a little higher now that I think about it a little more, and I'm just kind of like speaking off the cuff about it because it really is just such a fun ride. It's such a good movie. And kind of like the perfect Friday the 13th film. There are just like, I guess, things about it that, you know, maybe just don't play in like for the nostalgia factor for me as much. But yeah, Jason Lives is a really great one. Really great movie. Maybe it should be a little higher on this list.
4. Friday the 13th. Part 2.
I love Part 2. I've always loved Part 2. As a kid, Part 2 was like my second favorite for the longest time. I love Pillowcase Jason. I think he's scarier with his one little eye hole. It's definitely not as recognizable and marketable, and I can certainly see why they went a different direction with having like the hockey mask. But man, Pillowcase Jason is terrifying, and Jason is really terrifying in this movie. This is the one in the franchise that I like to put blinders on and ignore the sequels, and just kind of think of Part 2 as a contained movie. I think this is like the instance where that works, and this is like a genius film, and it's like the perfect way to follow up the first one. And I know that like Tom Savini famously says, well, you can't have the second one or any of the sequels because Jason is just a dead kid in the first one. But I think that the second movie does like a really good job of bridging that gap. Like maybe he's not, or maybe, creepy backwoods Jason had something to do with some of the deaths in the first one, So, I love the way that it starts. I love Mother's head in the refrigerator. It's got just a lot of really good moments. I love the wheelchair kill, where he like falls down the steps. I think all of that is really cool. And it's got one of the best asses to ever grace film screen. And no, I'm not making a joke there. Like, I'm serious. Like, there's that shot where the girl is walking and she's got booty shorts and they shoot the rock at her ass. I mean, I forget who that actress is, but she had like the greatest ass of all time. Every time I see that, I'm like, Jesus Christ! But the second one is just such a good movie. The way that it ends is like so perfect, where I can't remember the character's name, it escapes me at the moment, where she puts the sweater on and she acts like Mother and like kind of dupes Jason for a little bit, and then you get to see him without the pillowcase at the end, and he's like all like looks like Sloth from the Goonies. And it's got like that fake out ending scare, just kind of like the first one had. So I just think it's like a really, really, it's probably like in my opinion, it's like the best film in the series, maybe like most well made. It's not, there's no like tongue in cheek shit going on. It's like very earnest and I think it like works really well, and it's got stuff that's like still pretty scary. It's got like some good jump scares and good gore. So I think like if any of these, in my opinion, like which one is like the art one, like which one's like a work of art, I think this is like the capital ART art one of the bunch. I think it's like the most like well made, serious horror film here in the franchise. But it's not my favorite.
3. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Now, Part 5 is like really, really hated among the Friday the 13th crowd. And I guess I understand why. Like, I mean, I'm sure if you were like alive when these movies were coming out, you might like really have been kind of pissed off by the twist ending and everything. But for me, man, I loved it. And as I remember, my cousin and I, we rented all of them except for Part 5. Like, maybe it wasn't there or something. Or maybe we rented it and just skipped it or something. But I remember the first time I was aware of Part 5 was right around Halloween, and like AMC would play, all the Friday the 13th films, and it was really late one night, and I remember coming out into the living room and my dad was asleep, and it was the end of Part 5. It was just Tommy Jarvis going to the hospital. And, like, that whole scene of, like, seeing Jason and then him, like, grabbing the mask and then, like, the twist ending with him, like, holding the knife and now Tommy has the mask. And I wasn't aware at the time, as a kid, just seeing the ending, that was Tommy Jarvis. Like, I assumed as a little kid that was Jason Voorhees. And I remember being really intrigued by that, like, as a little kid, like, whoa, they took Jason to the hospital because he was hurt, like, 'cause that's what they have to do. They have an oath, or whatever. I'm sure I didn't think that hard about it. But I thought, whoa, that's just like really cool ending. Like I really want to see that. And then I remember renting it and watching it and like loving that twist. I thought that was brilliant. Like kind of I thought as a kid, I was like, what a cool way to like keep the franchise going. Like why didn't they do that? Why didn't they make Tommy Jarvis the new Jason Voorhees? Why did they just completely ignore that sequel as a movie? It's kind of a cool way to keep it going if you wanted to like maintain the canon thus far. Like, it's not like you see Jason's face really anyway, or like get to know too terribly much about his background. Although, if you watch the fan film that I'm in, you do get a lot about, like, who Jason Voorhees is. But, like, for the rest of the series, or at least for up to the 5th one, like, you don't get a ton. So, why not? It could be anybody under that mask. Like, who gives a shit who it really is, Like, people sitting around the campfire will still say Jason. You can still call him Jason. He's, like, by the end of the 5th one, he's, like, kind of infected by Jason's ghost anyway, so maybe he is Jason. I don't mind the 5th one at all. I think that it's actually really cool. I always thought that it was really cool. I like that it's continuing the Tommy Jarvis story, and I like that he's like disturbed and he's in this like kind of home for mentally ill people. It's one that kind of gets a bad rap just because of its twist ending, I guess, and people are always like, oh, it's not Jason, and like, I forget the character's name, but he's like killing everyone because his son was killed. Like, he's like the paramedic or whatever. Like he's like skinny, but there are like cool kills in that movie and stuff. And like, I know that like the mask is different, but it's like a slightly new Jason. So, and I like the aspect of like using the Jason legend to like commit murder and like possibly get away with it. I think that that's pretty cool. And then you have like the little African American kid who like saves the day. Like that's pretty groundbreaking, and definitely for like this franchise. And then it's got, what's his name? Miguel Nunez Jr. from Return of the Living Dead is in it, and he's also I think in Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. Like, he's cool. He's always, like, it's always a warm welcome to see him. So, I mean, it's a cooler movie than I think it gets credit for. I really enjoy this one. It's one that I go back and watch. I really like the backwoods hillbilly on his motorcycle who's like, Mom! And then he gets, like, his head cut off. It's also got, like, the great kill with, like, there's, like, the super, Bucks, I don't know. She's got super big boobs and she's like topless and she gets killed with the hedge clippers. I mean, that's like really cool death. There's like really cool deaths in this movie. There's really just like not much to dislike about this film, I guess, other than the twist ending, which is like calm the fuck down, guys. It's like kind of cool, and nobody saw it coming the first time they saw this movie, so it worked. You guys just didn't like that it worked so well, I guess.
2. Jason's reign of terror is over. Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
I understand why it's everybody's favorite. It's got a great cast in it. You've got fucking Corey Feldman as young Tommy Jarvis. We introduced Tommy Jarvis, and Tommy Jarvis, it's perfect because he like is us as the viewer. He's a monster movie fan, and the whole movie you can tell that the entire movie is kind of like an homage to us as the viewer. I mean, it's really cool. We get a lot of really cool masks and stuff, and I mean, there are a lot of movies that do that. I think Fright Night is one that comes to mind where it's like really kind of like paying tribute, and there's like a lot of fan service sort of going on within the movie. And it's a really good one. It's got great effects because Tom Savini comes back. You've got Jason in his hockey mask, check. You've got great effects, check. You've got a great cast, check. You've got fan service, check. You get to see Jason without his mask and he looks fucking cool, check. I mean, this movie just checks all the fucking boxes. And it, is sort of serious, but to an extent. It's not taking itself overly seriously. They definitely knew, what they were doing with this one, and it's got the destroy all monsters effect to it, where they assumed, this is it, this is the last one, this is the final Friday, let's, go all out, let's, spend a shit ton of money, let's get a good cast, let's bring Tom Savini back, and let's, do this thing right. And they did it right. I mean, everything about it is phenomenal. The kills in it are great. When Jason gets killed is definitely the highlight of the film. Him going down on the machete and it's cutting his the top of his head off. And the twist ending with Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis maybe becoming the new Jason, which was followed up on in the fifth one, which I really like. This one and the fifth one are it's weird because you can watch both of those back to back and they kind of fit. If you're just trying to go for a Tommy Jarvis kind of kick, you're trying to follow how that one ends into him being a psycho. Those are kind of two peas in a pod. So I really enjoy the fourth one a bunch. I don't really know what else to say about it because this one is reviewed to death and everyone blows this one. Obviously it's great. I don't know what else I'm supposed to add to this review. It just has these phenomenal moments in it. Isn't Crispin Glover in this one too? It's just got a really good cast. It's just super it's what you think of when you think of Friday the 13th. If aliens came down from another planet and they're we've heard of Friday the 13th. We want you to show us a Friday the 13th film. And we speak we're from 1920s New York. I would show them this one. I think I would show them part 4. I think it perfectly encapsulates, the 80s, which is obviously what you think of when you think of Friday the 13th. It's the mid 80s. You get that style and the music and you just get a little bit of everything. It's sort of perfect all around. Kind of what I was saying about Jason Lives. 5 and 6 are kind of mirror images of each other. And maybe now thinking about it, maybe that's why part 6 is a little bit lower on my list, because it kind of feels just maybe a little too similar to number 4. And number 4 probably does it a little bit better. They use a lot of the same elements where it's sort of goofy at times, but pretty serious, and a lot of money felt it went into it, and a lot of care and fan service went into it. And I think that 4 just does it a little bit better. So number 6 is just kind of feels like a mirror image, kind of a carbon copy in a way to the fourth one. But number 4. Number 2 is the best horror film in the series, and this one is the best Friday the 13th film in quotations in the series. But it's not my favorite.
1.
Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, New York has a new problem.
Oh god, I have to defend Jason Takes Manhattan all the fucking time. I have to defend it to everybody. Nobody ever agrees with me, and, maybe they probably shouldn't, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, is my favorite Friday the 13th film. It's the one that I have the most fun watching. It's the one that I've seen the most. It's the one that I'm probably going to go watch right now because I've been talking about Friday the 13th for the past half an hour in my movie room. it's just like everything that I like about like stupid slasher 80s movies. It's so brilliant. I don't even know where to start. Like the acting is like so weird and bizarre, and like the actors in it are really weird and bizarre. And I've gotten to a point with the movie where I'm like, is this a parody of Friday the 13th films? Like, is this a joke? Or were they joking when they were making this? Like, they're like everything's tongue-in-cheek? Like, is it like the most brilliant, like, Spinal Tap movie? Like, not like mockumentary, but I just mean in like mocking the Friday the 13th series. It's like, is it being serious? I can't tell. It's like mocking the 80s. It's like they just took every fucking trope and rolled it into this movie. Like, down to calling the movie Jason Takes Manhattan, but having literally like 15 minutes, 10 minutes of the movie taking place in Manhattan. And even when they're in Manhattan, they're not even in Manhattan. There's maybe like 5 shots in New York City, and like some of the other city stuff is clearly like Toronto or like some back alley, you know, like conveniently they're like hanging out on subway cars and in the sewers like with chud liquid most of the time that they're in New York. And then like 85% of the movie takes place on like some boat that, you know, is like Jason takes some little boat somewhere in Canada is really what the movie is. Like, and down to that, it's like, were you trolling? Was this movie a troll? Because it's great. You know, I did a video earlier, I was talking about, like, the Wicker Man remake, and I've always said how much I love movies like The Room and stuff like that, movies that are, like, so deliciously bad, and I absolutely love that. And I love that when they turn out that way, and they were, like, trying really hard. And with this one, I'm assuming that they were trying really hard, like that the producers and directors and screenwriters were just like, oh yeah, man, we're just like, it's 1988, let's like do some, or 1989, like, we know what the kids like, and they put like all the weirdest 80s tropes in it, like you have like the girl who's like Joan Jett, and like, oh, just the dialogue in this movie, man. The dialogue in this movie is so hilarious. Like, it's so cringeworthy, and like, I say it out loud with the movie. Like, they just like have some of the weirdest line deliveries. Like, in this movie. Like, the part where it's like, you have the guy who's like, this voyage is doomed, but he's like the deckhand. And I don't know, I just can't describe it well. Like, but the lines are just so fucking funny. And you have that, I can't remember his name, he's that actor, but he always plays kind of like the grumpy principal, and he's like on this cruise for the high school seniors, and they're going to New York, and he's just got like some of the best dialogue, man. And just like, the movie takes place on this little yacht, and he's like, Jason Voorhees is a legend, and it's like they're on some party yacht. It's just so funny that they're like talking about this or making this serious at all. Like, I mean, even in this universe, if like Jason Voorhees was like more well known to the population and could actually be a threat, like, how did he get from Camp Crystal Lake to like some river that's gonna go up to New York? Or like, I don't know, like, where are they? Like, what's the geography of where they actually are? It's so bizarre. And like, Jason Voorhees just like comes up out of the water and gets on the boat, and you're just like, all right, I guess he's like here now on this fucking boat. And like the kills in it are just like really fucking weird. Like, he doesn't even have any weapons throughout the movie. He just like punches the mirror and has some glass, or he takes like the hot rocks from a steam bath and like kills people with it. And of course he kills like Guitar Girl with her guitar. It's just, oh my god. And like the character Julius has like the best line. I know I'm all over the place, because I love this movie so much. I can just rant about just individual things about this movie that I find so like delightful. Like this movie just just kind of like oafs around and does all these like really funny, like bizarre things, and you can't tell if it's serious or not. I love this movie. But there's this scene where they all get like their weapons and it's like, we're gonna fight Jason on this boat. Like, we're gonna take him down. And like the Julius character is even like, schools out, McCullough. And they get like all these weapons, and Julius is like this like school champion for boxing, I guess. But like there's like taking all their like knives and stuff. And they're like, what are you gonna take, Julius? He's like, nothing but this gun. It's like the coolest moment in the movie. And spoiler alert, Julius has his big like boxing match with Jason on top of like a roof in Manhattan somewhere, and like he lands like a bunch of punches, and it's like, that's like one moment in this movie where I'm like, that's pretty cool. He like actually like goes mano a mano. And, like, I get it, like, nothing hurts Jason, but, dude, he lands, like, 50 punches, so, I mean, he puts up the best fight in the franchise, even though he, like, barely hurts him. Like, he, like, breaks out his moves and everything, and then gets his fucking block knocked off, like, into a garbage can, and it's, like, the worst severed head I've ever seen, and, like, you can tell that, like, the director or whatever was like, oh, this thing's fucking dope. Let's just like randomly put it up in the car later for everyone to find. And it's just like got the dopiest like expression on its face. Oh my god, this movie is so good. Oh, well, you definitely gotta have the character who like has a dad who wants him to live up to be a certain thing. But since we're on a boat, we're gonna make the dad the captain of the boat, and his son just happens to be a high school senior on this trip, and the boat captain is like, what do we do now, son? You gotta send out the maritime signal. It's like, and he like storms out of the little cabin. It's like, why are they doing this? Why? It's like not needed. I get that it's like a trope, but it's not really like a trope within this franchise. It's kind of just like a like 80s teen trope, I guess, to like not live up to be your dad. And then of course he like kind of does, because the boat sinks and they get on this little dinghy and like row to New York City on this little dinghy. And of course Jason like swims there and meets them. And the best, oh my god, the best moment in this movie, the best moment are like the like non-Puerto Rican heroin dealer addicts who like randomly like kidnap the girl, and they're like one of them is white and the other one's like Native American or something. They like kidnap the girl and they keep saying Holmes. Like there's like we're gonna have some fun with her, Holmes, but they're like not Puerto Rican. They don't have the accent, so they're literally just saying Holmes. And like they like take her back to their little lair and like shoot her up so that they can like rape her, I guess. And the one drug dealer's name is Jojo. He's like, you better go get us some more smack, Jojo. And he like walks away, and then Jason Voorhees comes in and kills the one, and like a white Puerto Rican gangster comes back and he's just like walks into the scene where Jason Voorhees is there, and he's just like, forgot my money, Holmes. And then and the soundtrack is the best. The soundtrack in this movie is the best. Like, they have that rock song, which is actually it's called The Darkest Side of the Night. I listen to this song all the time. And it's in It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive. Like, it was actually used in multiple soundtracks. And it's just like the most 80s, like, once again, it's like, did they get this band and you're like, all right, it's 1989, like, make a parody of this decade, like, make the, like, most cliche 80s hair metal song you could ever possibly make. And I love that fucking song. I love the guitar riff, and it has, like, really weird lyrics in it, like, neon shadows walk through the walls, and it's like, oh my god, like, I could not, like, if you type into Google what is the most 80s lyric ever, it's gotta be neon shadows, right? Neon shadows? That is so ridiculous, but it's just like the perfect, like, 80s hair metal, and it's like one of those songs where you're like, who is this, like Scorpion? Or it sounds like everything from the late 80s. It's just so perfect. I've seen Friday the 13th Part 8 way more than I've seen any other in the entire franchise. I mean, I watch this one all the time. It's my go-to no matter what. It's just perfect. Like, way more than I've seen any other one in the entire series. I've seen it so many times since I was a little kid, like, so many times since, like, age 12 or 13, that I know every single trailer that plays on the Paramount VHS, like, by heart. Like, I know the narration to those trailers. It's got Hunt for Red October. And, like, I don't know if I can do it right on the spot, but, like, at the end, the narrator, like, lists off every single person, like, all the stars in that movie, and he's like, Alec Baldwin, Scott Glenn, James Earl Jones, oh, shit, see, I can't do it, Sam Neill, The Hunt for Red October. Like, I've seen it that many times. I also know that Shadow Zone is, like, the fucking movie Shadow Zone is advertised before this movie plays. This one's so good. And it's got the best cover. Like, I need a big poster of this with, like, Jason, like, sloppily cropped over Manhattan with his stupid little knife that he doesn't even use in the movie. Like, this movie is genius, you guys. And I know people hate it. I know that nobody agrees with me. But just, like, open your heart and open your eyes and ears and watch this movie again. And just, like, I can't talk about this movie without laughing, because that's how much joy it brings me. Like, listen to this movie, listen to the dialogue, watch the scenes, think about them, like, logically for a minute, and then, like, laugh your fucking ass off at this movie. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Alright, guys, there it was. My list of Friday the 13th films, worst to best. My opinion, like just what I prefer, not best films, obviously. Like I said, you guys, like I said, guys, Friday the 13th, Vengeance, a film that I was in. I played a pretty big part. It's like an official canon fan film, big budget fan film, is for free. And I'm going to have the link below. Please watch it. Please leave comments. Let me know what you guys think.
He's here.